Hey YouTube, I thought I'd take a second here and put together a little basic tutorial on music theory. Just something, not anything very advanced, just something for a very basic beginner level just to get somebody who's just getting into playing music started. Now, music seems like it's a complicated thing, and you'll hear all kinds of stuff about math. And I'm going to tell you right now, as a musician, you don't really need to know a bunch of that. What you need to know is that there are 12 individual notes that have a unique sound, and they repeat. They'll sound like a higher pitch, but the note will be the same. So, what are those notes, and how are they labeled? Well, you get A through G, and they use only those letters. I don't personally understand why. I think it would make a lot more sense and be easier for people if they would use more letters instead of having sharps and flats, but that's what they do. Now, obviously, that's only 7 letters. So, for the notes that are extra, they have to compress everything to fit in those 7 letters, so you end up with sharp notes or flat notes. So you get an A, and then in between A and B, you get A sharp, which could also be known as B flat. Now, between B and C, there is no note there. Because of the way that everything is divided up, there's a blank space. So then you get C, and then C sharp, D flat, D, D sharp, E flat, E, and then you get F. Immediately after E, you get F. There is no flat or sharp there. Then you get F sharp, flat, G flat, G, and then G sharp, A flat. The standard tuning that everybody's familiar with sets A to be equal to 440 hertz. All that means for you as a musician is that you have some standard that you can tune your instrument to, and you can show up to a stage anywhere in the world and you can reliably know that you can play your instrument with everybody else and it's going to sound okay. Really, the tuning it's a ratio, and your brain picks up on the differences inside of that ratio and converts them into distinguishable steps that you recognize as notes. It doesn't have to be 440. It could be 432. It could be 442. It could be 438. It's been many things through history. Now, I designed an ocarina here. It's a C5 to a C6, so I'm going to use this to demonstrate the concept. This works as a pressure relief chamber, and you know what, actually, instead of, we'll just jump straight into the demonstration. So your ocarina might be different, but if you bought a tenor ocarina, then you should have the same overall tuning. It should start at a C5. And if it doesn't, well, it doesn't really matter. Really, it's just your bass note. All of the theory is just, it's going to stay the same. And if you would prefer to practice along with one of these, I'll put a link in the description below as to where you can buy the file and print off your own. But yeah, so with woodwinds, in general, you get your bass note by covering all of the holes. And while it's not quite true for flutes because they have separate resonance going on, it's generally kind of the rules sort of follow. So if you don't have a note sheet and you pick up an unfamiliar instrument, if you follow these rules, you can work your way to finding all the notes. So your bass note is going to be with all of your holes covered. And as you relieve, and especially with a flute or a recorder, as you relieve pressure from the end, or with an ocarina, pressure from the chamber as a whole, you start to get a higher note. Like that. Now, the way that music is done and organized is to make everything predictable and playable, and sounding decent. What people learned a long time ago is that certain notes really don't sound that great beside each other when played in quick succession in musical settings. So people worked it out and they found a whole bunch of different combinations of patterns of choosing just basically 7 notes out of the 12 notes that you're going to use to play with. And they call it a scale. The most common scale is the major scale. And this ocarina here is tuned to C major. And so, following that pattern of fingers being removed, I make all of the notes in the C major scale going from top to bottom. If you play with this ocarina and you only make the finger patterns that I just made, you can play anything continuously and it will sound okay because you're stuck on the major scale, so every single note that you make fits. But you shouldn't be too worried about that because you don't have to play on the major scale. You could instead and by blocking this hole over here, I've now gone to a flat instead of going to the whole note. By just blocking one extra hole, I've lowered my pitch. And now, instead of being on the major scale, I'm now playing on the minor scale. I'll have to double check the notes, but it's that simple. It's a scale is 7 notes that you choose out of the 12, and you play those 7 notes. Not every scale sounds great. There are some that, and this is my opinion, that sound like garbage. But maybe I've never heard any music that was made with them that sounds appealing to me. So I'll leave you with a little song that you can practice before we leave. And forgive me if I don't get this perfect on the first try. I get really nervous on camera here, especially with the woodwinds. I'm more confident with my ukulele or stringed instrument, but so see if we can show that better here. Now, you can see I messed up there. I continued playing. That's an important note for you musicians. If you want to ever get good at playing on a stage, you need to be comfortable making mistakes playing music in front of people. You're not going to be like a concert pianist doing that, and you're not going to be in orchestras doing that. But you will be able to play in front of a crowd, and you will be able to play music in a bar or any of those kinds of settings, because the reality is you notice your mistake and most people don't. But that is probably also one of the most important lessons that you can learn in music, is to roll with the mistakes that you make. It's so tempting when you're playing and you miss a note to stop playing and go, hang on, let me try again, and to have that impulse. And as a performing musician, you need to quell that impulse and continue the show like it didn't happen. And the crowd will appreciate it, your listeners will appreciate it, and that is what is going to allow you to perform in front of people, is being comfortable with making mistakes. So, have a great day. Like I said, if you want to purchase your own copy of this ocarina to practice along with, or you would like to support this channel and the work that I'm doing, I'll post a link in the description below where you can go and purchase your own copy of this ocarina that you can print on your 3D printer, or have printed at a 3D print service, and follow along. Note sheets are available on the page that I will link to below, and thank you very much for your time. I'll talk to you later.